The ACT project promotes communities of practice as a new way to work towards gender equality in the European research area. Gender equality plans aim for structural change in organisations. Changing the way people and institutions work and operate is difficult and takes time. Resistance to change has been identified as one of the main reasons why gender equality plans can fail. Identifying different forms and causes of resistance is a first step to effectively overcoming them.
Yeah, I think resistance to gender equality is part and parcel of the picture. So we might as well get busy learning about different types of resistance and all the nuances that we need to understand, because in the resistance there's also a lot of very valuable information.
So how do we get people to recognise different forms of resistance? In the training we're working on categorisation. We are currently working on theories of resistances, constantly trying to refine our analysis of resistances and improve the categorization, the definition, so we can understand different kinds of resistances better.
Resistance to change can be intentional and explicit, or subtle and implicit. Explicit resistance can be easy to identify, but difficult to deal with.
Overt resistance is, we gave a symposium on why looking at gender aspects of academic recruitment is important, what kinds of potential it has to do that, also for the quality, the overall quality. And I think we had 2 hours of brilliant speakers and panel discussions, and during those 2 hours we had a number of people sitting at the top of the auditorium, and as soon as the plenary discussion opened up, then they had their hands up, and 3 young men they sat throughout the 2 hours, and they just started out by saying, we don't buy this, we think it's biased propaganda, it's leftist. Why is it that women need to access the highest echelons of academia? It's obvious why men are better and why men hold the positions and so on. That's a very, very explicit and overt form of resistance.
It can be harder to identify implicit resistance, as it can take the form of non-action, the failure to allocate sufficient resources, or lack of prioritisation of gender equality on the institutional agenda.
What we do encounter much more often, what I also hear from other people, is that there is seemingly a compliance with what we do, but then when it comes to making sure that we can meet, for instance, or that the data is provided, or that it's put on the agenda, or the right people are asked to come join us, then there's this, yeah, and nothing happens. So this inaction and this way of not really owning up to the resistance that is really there, or the foot dragging.
Resistance also operates at different levels. It can operate at the individual level or at the institutional level. Individual resistance can take many forms, including denial of the need for gender equality actions, or more obstructive actions aiming to dismantle or discredit progress made. At the individual level, it may also be more subtle and difficult to detect, but characterised by a general disengagement with actions, plans and processes developed to further gender equality.
So individual resistances can be anything from personal reasons to political reasons to insecurity around job status, particular ideas around meritocracy and gender equality being a threat to meritocracy. This is a very strong issue, particularly in the natural sciences.
Institutional resistance can be seen as the aggregated action or non-action that systematically opposes changes linked to furthering gender equality. This may manifest in an explicit resistance to implementing actions like gender quotas in institutional bodies, or be much more subtle and difficult to detect, stemming from deeply embedded organisational processes and procedures.
Other issues are more institutional, about lack of resources or lack of human resources or budget. It's not necessarily an active resistance to gender equality nor a passive resistance, but rather people are very keen to support structural change and want to be perceived that they agree, and in a meeting it's like yes, we agree, but then there's inaction and inertia. So that's perhaps where it's more difficult to recognise, because if we have a broad consensus on gender equality within the institution and yet nothing gets done, that's also a kind of resistance.
So what can be done to tackle individual resistance?
We've been doing role plays of just trying to understand how easy it is to be in a group opposing or resisting, and that can feel very powerful for the resisting group. So we try and understand that mentality and look for strategies at dealing with tackling individual resistances and group resistances. So institutional resistances are more difficult to deal with, and in the training we've developed the metaphor of an iceberg. So the issues that are above the water, easy to see and easy to tackle, are the resistances the issues that we are less challenged when addressing, and we find more cooperation and consensus among colleagues in the institution. And then the structural change underneath the water of the iceberg, that's the institutional issues that come down to procedures, bureaucratic issues, policies and institutional culture, and those are much more difficult to tackle and tackle more in a long-term way. So really in the training we're focusing more on dealing with the resistances that we experience on a day-to-day basis.
Some of the most significant interventions identified in the Fester Handbook involve both women and men in gender equality work in the organisation, keep gender equality issues on the organisational agenda, and make gender initiatives more visible. Provide evidence of the success of interventions related to gender issues. Bring on board external influential sponsors to create a positive impact inside and outside of the institution. Involve key institutional stakeholders with power, commitment and willingness into the project. Look to create synergies with national developments, events and policies. Carry out training on gender equality to raise awareness at the institutional level. Clearly define what kind of change is intended and possible sites of resistance and why. Organisational change should be viewed as an outcome of the dynamics of both power and resistance.
First of all, the most important thing to acknowledge is that resistances are positive. Resistances to gender equality and structural change demonstrate that we are moving, that we're creating dynamic political change. Resistances comes back when power relations begins to shift. So first we need to celebrate resistances and engage with them in a political, strategic manner.
Tackling gender inequalities is a complex problem, and by involving a wide range of stakeholders to reflect and act together, resistances can be identified, tackled, and the change process can be enhanced.
And because it's such a complex problem or complex issue that touches on so many different areas and involves so many different actors, then there will never sort of be the right thing to do. That simply won't occur, because if it occurs or if it seems that way, then if you pursue that one right way, then you're sure to create problems along the line for somebody else. So my recommendation is to really practice reflection. and reflecting with others. The community of practice is hugely important. It's crucial for doing the kind of work that I do and others do, because we need to keep honing our skills of reflecting together. And not only together in the community of practice, but the more we're able to do it there, the more we're able to do it with the people we are dealing with in our organizations. And we need to, I mean, it's an absolute must for succeeding at all, is to engage in very deep reflections with the people we're engaging with, so that we can come up with solutions that are creative and are new. Because this is, if we keep perpetuating the same kinds of actions and solutions, then we're going to get the same kinds of problems.
If you and the academic institution you work for are interested in gender equality, please get in touch and consider joining the ACT Communities of Practice.